Day 35. We are leading up to Sunday, of course. And I'm hoping that these readings will help you reflect and pause and give you some perspective about what we are celebrating this coming Sunday. Luke 24, they went back away from the tomb and told all this to the 11 and all the other disciples. This was Mary and Joanna, Mary. The women went back and told the disciples who didn't believe them. But it does say, Peter, though, got up and ran to the tomb. He stooped down and saw only the grave clothes. He went back home and perplexed at what had happened. So everything turns on the resurrection of Jesus, everything. And he says his son asked him a question that really puts things into perspective. But how did God give Jesus his life back? How did God raise him from the dead? And as far as he understands it, at the time he says he didn't really give his son an answer. But he says it breaks down to four components. There's the historical how. Why should we believe God raised Jesus from the dead when we know that dead people stay dead? Number two, there's the biological how. If God really did raise Jesus from the dead, what was and is the new biological body of Jesus like? Three, the theological how. What theological terms did God raise Jesus from the dead? Why does it matter? And finally, number four, there's the why does all of this make a difference in my life? How? How on earth, literally, do we put this into practice? It turns out, so he's not going to get into every part in just this chapter, but he's going into some historical how. Again, he's going back to the fact that women's testimony are not accepted during that time period. And there is various accounts of the resurrection that comes into play. First, why would a group of men whose testimonies of women don't count display this prominently in every gospel? You would not want to have women be the eyewitnesses because their testimony wouldn't be believed. You would never want to say that historically because those around you would say that doesn't count in court. So it doesn't make for a good case that women are the first and basically cornerstone witnesses of his rising. Second, there are details that don't agree with one another in the gospel accounts. However, he says this is a strength of the truth of the resurrection and not a claim that the minor differences make it less believable. He just says that it's different perspectives coming into play, although there are central elements to it. Like women are in every account. Jesus rising from the dead being the main, of course, count. And he relates a story to when he and I think his friends and his friend and his brother ended up breaking something, and they all had different perspective about how it came to be that this figurine shattered, and it's simply because they all had different points of view about the string of events itself. And so it wasn't a grand conspiracy, in fact, where they all tried to get their story straight. They all sounded the same, where they would say, let's make sure that our story is all airtight. First century documents read like they were written by people who experienced something real, something truly convincing, something truly overwhelming, and that actually happened. So the question of history, which is ultimately a question of faith, is why was Jesus's tomb empty? And he goes on to say, maybe his friends stole the body. Maybe the guards stole the body. Maybe the disciples, because of their deep devotion, made up the whole story. But he has questions like, how would they make it past the guards? What would the motive of the guards be to steal the body? Why would they make up a story about a dead friend and then give their lives to a cause if it doesn't truly mean anything? The disciples were absolutely convinced at some point, of course, when they see Jesus, that the world has now changed. And interestingly enough, Sunday, not being a holiday or a weekend, it was a regular working day, but for thousands of years now, Sunday has been commemorated ever since as a day that is holy because Jesus rose on a Sunday. Sunday wasn't simply the beginning of a new week for the earliest followers of Jesus. As we'll see in the next two chapters, it was the beginning of a whole new world.